It is week 3, and you know what that means. We are about to do some tier list adjustments yet again. And oh my gosh, before we even get started, let me just say, the community is so divided on like where people should be placed. Like, I can have one comment saying somebody should be in S tier, where at the same time we'll have another person saying that same exact character should be in D tier. So I'll do my best here for you guys. We'll just see where we end up. So first off, Uraraka, the reason I placed her in D tier before is because of how her kit works cohesively. Like, that's the whole idea behind this tier list. How good are their kits? How good do these characters work? Are they clunky? Are they buggy? Stuff like that. Do they need buffs? Do they not do enough damage? Are they not strong enough? All that good stuff kind of goes into the thought process here for this tier list. So I put Uraraka down there kind of out of spite because I had been playing her a lot to do the event missions and stuff like that to see how good she could be. And her grapple hook is just annoyingly buggy, and then additionally her anti-gravity field, it was kind of hard to combo it with your other moves, your hammer, your Subaru, whatever you know, the spin move that you throw at people. It's hard to combo the spin move with the anti-gravity with the grapple hook. Like, it's a clunky kit. It's hard to use, okay? Honestly, she has a lot of potential. She can do a lot of damage. She can spin forever if you upgrade her spin kit. Yeah, even though her beta move is really strong, I'm just not the biggest fan of her kit still. And maybe once they fix the grapple in the game, there's an argument for her to go even higher. But I am going to move her back up. Just to, before you click off the video, I'm moving her back up. But yeah, I think I'm going to put her, into I gotta go C. Okay? And technically she'd be above Kendo, but I'm not putting these in order of like who's first. Like, Uraraka's first, then Kendo first for all of these tiers. But just keep in mind, Uraraka would be above Kendo. Kendo is going to stay in C tier. I actually did a poll on YouTube, if you guys haven't looked at that poll yet on the channel, and I was like, which character is the weakest? And by far, the votes were for Kendo, and the second most votes were actually for Uraraka. Okay, so I feel okay keeping her in C tier. I mean, people have voted, so at the very least, it seems the majority of people agree with me that these two characters are relatively weak or need some help in the game compared to other characters in My Hero Ultra Rumble right now. And you know, it might be different on console versus PC. I play on PC. You might feel differently that these characters are really strong on console, but at least for me on PC, I do agree with the votes that people have done in saying that these two characters seem to be the weakest right now. Uraraka because she's bugged, and Kendo just because she is a defensive character, and she's not meant to get out there and do massive amounts of damage. She's meant to help the team. She's meant to support the team. So kit wise, she's not very strong, which is why we're putting her in C tier. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys, okay? Next, we're going to be moving Mount Lady down one tier. Mount Lady is good, but now people are learning how to counter her giant form, which is just spam the crap out of her. Everybody focus her. Even if 3 teams are in a mix, right? The 2 teams that might have been fighting each other, they're going to stop and hopefully focus Mount Lady down, and then Mount Lady's giant form is just pointless, right? You kill the raid boss off, you're good, and you don't have to worry about her anymore, and people are starting to figure that out. So we're going to move Mount Lady down to A tier. There's still an argument, potentially, for S tier, because if the circle gets really small and she transforms, there's nowhere to run. She becomes really strong. But earlier in the game, if you don't make it to that very really late game phase, which a lot of times doesn't happen because the map is not very big, there's not a lot of teams on the map, she is A tier. Unfortunately, as much as I like Mount Lady, we're going to put her in A tier. The next character we're going to be moving, I think it would be fair to move Iida up to A tier for sure. I know people want him in S. Okay, some people want him in S. He's not going into S. Okay, he is still going to be outranged by Bakugo and outdamaged by Bakugo, Todoroki even, and Toga. Like, all of them can technically beat Iida fairly easily. Like, Bakugo should have his own tier realistically. He's not comparable to any other character, especially after all the playing I've done in the last week. Like, it's not comparable. Iida is not as good as these characters. He is really good at running away and getting out of bad situations, which is amazing. Like, so when you go into a fight as Iida, there should be like only a 30% chance that you die if you know what you're doing. Like you're not going to be dying if you're playing Iida. Hopefully you're going to be going in, doing quick attacks, hopefully knocking somebody down, or maybe you're kicking somebody out of the fight that's already been knocked down so you can finish them, and then you're getting out as Iida. Okay, so Iida is really, really good, but in my opinion, he is not as good as the characters we currently have in S tier. Looking at these other characters, I feel like Dabi actually needs to go down one tier. I feel like Dabi needs to go down to B tier because his projectile speed is just so slow compared to some of these other characters. Like Su can bounce around him, Compress can run away pretty easily and reposition himself to do a lot of damage fairly easily. He drops trucks on people. Dabi throws fireballs at people that do kind of auto lock. They do, you have that argument, they auto lock onto people, but the projectile speed is very, very slow. He also has the fire that he puts down around himself that can block projectiles, and he can set traps. But just overall, if you run out of your primary fire, you're kind of standing there with Dabi like, well, what do I do now? I can set some traps, but if this person is, you know, shooting at me as a Bakugo, I guess I can throw down my fire for a few seconds, hope my primary fire comes back up. But it's a lot harder to use Dabi's kit cohesively and effectively in the game than some of these other characters, which is why I'm going to move him down to B tier, and hopefully that argument makes sense. I feel comfortable with moving him down to B tier. He's still good. He can still be very, very good in the right hands. Same for all of these characters. Every character in the game. No character feels terrible, okay? No character feels absolutely like really, really bad. It just depends on whose hands they're in. But for a general like kit consensus, I feel like Dabi has to go down to B tier. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. Hopefully that's all right. The next character that I want to move is going to be Shigaraki. Shigaraki does not belong down here with Dabi and Kirishima and Yayorozu. Shigaraki can do some of the best damage in the game, especially if you make it to late game. Early game though, his problem is he doesn't do all that much. You do have to have his skills leveled up. Additionally, his range is kind of rough. Like he has good range when he's able to touch the ground, but let's say you have a Bakugo, you're in Typhoon Zone, you're on top of a roof, you have a Bakugo on the other roof. What do you do? What do you do? You don't have any range to snipe the Bakugo who's across on the other roof, and that's the problem with Shigaraki. But if you know how to play to his strengths, you know how to position yourselves, hopefully you're not putting yourself on a roof where you're going to be sniped by another enemy, right? Then Shigaraki could definitely be A tier just for his damage alone. Like he does some of the most damage in game. He's actually insane. So we'll put him in A tier for that. But in terms of his kit, I almost want to keep him in B tier, because just his kit is hard to use compared to, especially with, you know, these ranged characters being the meta that they are. We're going to move Deku up to S tier as well. Deku is going to go up to S tier because he's just kind of in that same category as Bakugo and Todoroki. The one thing though, he does have a grapple. The grapple is bugged kind of for everybody that has a grapple, which is annoying. But a lot of people have missed this, and I missed it at first on his kit too, is that when you crouch with Deku and you use your air cannon, you actually do like, I think it's like 30% more damage or something like that when you use that. So you can actually snipe people for a whole lot of damage, and Deku can hit pretty hard. So, and that's in his kit. You can go read that in his kit. So we're going to move him up because he actually can do more damage than we thought he originally can do. I would say he's definitely on par with Todoroki and Bakugo if you're using him correctly. He is probably a little bit harder to use in the fact that you don't always want to be crouching to shoot. So yeah, we're going to put him there. I am happy with keeping Kaminari in A tier. He does have some good mobility. If you jump, you can actually use his dash to like get to the top of roofs and things like that. A lot of people don't know to do that. Cementoss almost could be S tier, but once again, his mobility is not the greatest. His ability to throw down bricks and like make a platform for himself in the middle of a fight, snipe people down below is so much fun. Really, really good. It feels like you're almost playing like Fortnite or Minecraft in My Hero Ultra Rumble. But once again, I think if you have a good Bakugo player, good Todoroki player, or Deku player, they're still going to be able to kind of poop on Cementoss maybe. It just depends on how good these three really are. Whose hands are they in, you know? But we're going to put Cementoss. We're going to leave him in A tier. Ibara, she is also one of those characters that doesn't have the greatest range. And I mean, like, at early game, she doesn't have the greatest range, right? Early game, she doesn't have the greatest mobility. But you get her, let's say, alpha skill, her primary fire, leveled up to level 9. Holy crap, her range is so good late game. It's really, really good. It can be hard to use her kit to like grab people or to use the rest of her kit. Her primary fire is really, really strong. But because I feel like it's hard to use her beta and gamma skills, especially once again against characters like Todoroki, Bakugo, and Deku, who are able to fight Ibara at such a range, it makes it hard for her to get close to them, to use her full kits. I'm going to actually put her down in B tier. I feel like that's fair to move her down to B because it's just, she doesn't have the mobility to get there and she doesn't necessarily have the range. Her alpha attack has the range and it's all like a wide sweeping range. It's actually really, really good. It's insanely good. But the rest of her kit can be a little bit hard to get close enough to these characters to actually make use of it. So we're going to put her in B tier. And I feel like I've moved her around a whole lot from where I originally had her placed. But like, she was really annoying at the start of the game for people when we were just first learning how to play, because she could grab people, trap them in her vines, and you're basically down unless your teammate saves you, right? Now people know to just avoid her and snipe her, and then she can't do anything, right? So I think that's fair. For Sue, I feel like Sue's kit is relatively easy to use. She has great mobility. I think we're going to move her up to S tier. Just in terms of kit, she has a really good kit. She can do a ton of damage. She has good escapability with her camouflage. She's honestly like one of my, if I were to say a perfect character, she's really good. She's really, really, really good. So I think Sue does belong in S tier as an overall really amazing character. I do think she's going to be a little bit better than Iida. Iida still has the downside, of course, of his reciprocal burst, slowing him down at the end of it. Now, you can cancel the reciprocal burst and get extra jumps out of it and stuff like that by rolling. But I still don't think Iida is just quite as good as Sue. I feel like Iida and Sue can do similar things, but Sue just does it a little bit better in my opinion. That's my opinion, of course. Then we have All Might. All Might, I feel like, is there have been a lot of people asking for All Might to be higher or lower. This is a character specifically where I had people say he should be an S, and then I also had people say he should be in B or C, right? So it's very mixed on All Might, and I think a large amount of that mixedness that we're getting is due to the fact that All Might is at the end of the special pass. Not a lot of people have him unlocked, so not a lot of people get to play him consistently because they're using rental tickets to play him and try him out. Now, he is actually solid because he can deflect projectiles and stuff like that while attacking at the same time, which is kind of insane for a character. Okay, he has his jump that lets him jump and get away from people. His primary alpha fire, he shoots basically air blasts like Mount Lady. And that's honestly solid. It does really good damage, but his range isn't quite there when it comes to comparing his range on his alpha skill to like Todoroki, Bakugo, and Deku's range on their alpha skill. I don't think his range is quite as good, but I would say his fire rate is equally as good. Like, he's really, really solid. And then of course he has his jump that gives him mobility. And so I feel like I should almost move him up to S tier, but I feel like I should leave him in A tier. This is one that he's like high A tier. If I were to, I'm going to leave him in A tier. Once again, I'm not putting these in any specific order, but let me just put him here. There is an argument for All Might to be an S, but like, he is definitely high A tier. He's definitely up there, and I'm going to put Iida up here too. He's like high A tier as well. Those two are high A tier. Argument for S there for those characters. Cementoss, I think, is definitely up there. Kaminari's not really. Compress is up there, high A tier. I guess I'm organizing these in somewhat of an order here for you. I didn't plan to, but I feel like I have to kind of make that known. Like, this is kind of the order I would put it in so far. Mount Lady, I do think, is probably slightly better than Kaminari. Then we have Kaminari, then Shigaraki. Okay, A tier looks right. Let me, Toga's still at the top of S tier because she can transform into any character. Technically, Bakugo is above her in a way, but because Toga can become Bakugo, we'll keep Toga there. Bakugo, Todoroki, I would actually put, I'd probably put Sue, no, actually Todoroki's really good. We'll put Sue right behind Todoroki and before Deku. Okay, so S tier looks good, A tier looks good. B tier, Yayorozu. A lot of people there was like please move up Yayurozu. Yayurozu is really strong. Her kit is really good. Her cannon is insanely good if you can aim it, okay? It has like no fall off, so you can aim across the map with Yayurozu and actually hit people across the map and break them. It's so much fun to use her cannon. Her shield is a little bit hard to use because it's hard to turn and directionally aim at enemies while you're using her shield bash. She has her grab bag, which can give your team like full heals and stuff like that, which is really, really good, like super useful for a special skill. And I feel like for those reasons, like even though it can be hard to kind of cohesively use her shield plus her cannon, and her mobility is not the greatest, to be honest, and she doesn't have a very far-reaching attack. Actually, I wanted to move her up to A. I was about to say I'm going to move her up to A, but I'm going to leave her in B because she doesn't have a far-reaching attack. She doesn't have great mobility. And while she can be really, really useful with her cannon and her shield and late game especially, I'm going to leave her in B for right now. I would leave her towards the top of B. So, like, she's the top of B. We'll organize B as well. I would say probably then it goes, actually Dabi after her. I'd put Dabi after her. Then Ibara, and then probably Kirishima. Kirishima being at the bottom of B sounds fair. Kirishima can be really, really good. It's just really hard to be effective with him being a character that literally has no range. He does have pretty decent movement, but no ranged attacks, which makes it a little bit rough to use him. Kaminari would be a good comparison to Kirishima. They're kind of similar. Kaminari doesn't, but Kaminari does have ranged attacks, you know, on his primary fire, and he has his AoE. Kirishima stuff is all directed attacks. He doesn't have any like real AoE besides his ground slam, I guess. That's an AoE, I suppose. But yeah, it's just harder to use Kirishima. Kaminari's AoE is giant. It's a giant bubble around him that does AoE. Kirishima's is on the ground hitbox. So it's definitely one of the hardest characters, in my opinion, to use right here is Kirishima. And because of just like how hard he is to use, because there are ranged characters in the game, that's what's keeping him at B. As a character himself, though, I think he has a pretty decent kit overall, I would say. And then, of course, C tier is already organized with Uraraka being ahead of Kendo. There is an argument, once again, Uraraka could be moved up to B, potentially even A tier, if they just fix her grapple. That would help a lot. Like, obviously, I feel like once in a while you get the same grapple issues with Sue or Deku, but I feel like it's a lot more consistent, especially having played all the characters quite a bit, that you get the grapple issues on Uraraka. Her hitbox seems smaller on the grapple, so it's a little bit harder to use, and that's why we're going to keep her in C tier for right now, but she's pretty much B tier. Could be an argument for A tier for her. Kendo in terms of kit is just hard to use, doesn't have great mobility, has her shield, you know, but she's a team player, not a solo player who can help herself. Really, you do rely, your team relies on you, but you rely on your team as Kendo, and for that reason we're going to keep Kendo in C tier. No D tier characters this time around. I don't think any character is like inherently terrible in this game, so I feel like that's fair. Let me know though if anything should be moved around, if you guys agree or disagree. Hopefully you watched through the whole video and you heard all the reasoning for all the characters and you didn't just skip to the end like I know I tend to do on tier lists, and I know a lot of people tend to do on tier lists. Hopefully you guys heard the reasoning for it and maybe you'll agree or disagree, and let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And if you guys enjoyed the video, please go down there, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and thank you guys for watching. Peace.
Maybach.